He took the throne at 20. By 25, he governed history's largest empire, and by 32, he was dead, having never lost a single battle. In his final moments, when asked who should inherit the vast territory he had won, he reportedly left it to just one person, the strongest. Within days of his death, the generals who had fought by his side for a decade turned their swords on each other. The man who spent 13 years mapping the conquest of the earth left no map for how it should be governed when he was gone. This drive was engineered from his youth. His father, King Philip II, provided a foundation in military logistics and practical ruthlessness, while his tutor, Aristotle, trained him in philosophy, medicine, and the strategic ideals of Greek culture. While his father taught him how to lead men, his mother, Olympias, convinced him of his own divinity, telling him he was the literal son of the god Zeus. When Philip was assassinated in 336 BC, the 20-year-old Alexander moved immediately to execute his rivals and secure the loyalty of the Macedonian army. He departed for Asia not merely as a king, but as a commander convinced that his success was ordained by the gods. Looking at this map, the scale of the challenge becomes clear. To conquer the Persian Empire, Alexander had to dismantle a superpower that stretched from the Mediterranean to the borders of India. At the Granicus River, he ignored his advisors and led a cavalry charge directly into the Persian lines, breaking the assumption that their imperial defenses were impenetrable. A year later, at Issus, he used the cramped terrain to launch a targeted strike straight at King Darius III, forcing the Persian ruler to abandon his army and flee the field. The final blow came at Gaugamela. On a flat plain designed specifically for Persian chariots and war elephants, Alexander's formations opened to swallow the charge before his cavalry drove into the heart of the Persian center. These three engagements effectively ended centuries of Persian dominance and left Alexander as the sole authority in the ancient world. After the victory, Alexander marched into the heart of the old empire and burned its capital, Persepolis, to the ground. He then pushed his army deeper into the east, through the mountain passes of the Hindu Kush, and into territories where no Macedonian army had ever set foot. As the campaign lengthened, he began adopting Persian court customs, such as forced bowing. This deeply alienated his Macedonian veterans, who saw these rituals as a betrayal of their own culture. Isolated from his old companions and drinking heavily, the king became increasingly susceptible to paranoia. During a drunken argument, this instability turned violent when Alexander took a javelin and killed Clitus, the same man who had saved his life during his first battle in Asia. The same traits that made him invincible against foreign armies were now causing the collapse of his own inner circle. By 326 BC, the army reached the Hydaspes River in India. There, they faced a new kind of warfare, fighting through monsoon rains against lines of armored war elephants. After 8 years of continuous marching and thousands of miles, the soldiers reached their limit. For the first time, the Macedonian army collectively refused to advance, forcing the king to turn back. The only force on earth capable of stopping Alexander's momentum was the physical exhaustion of the men who had built his empire. In June of 323 BC, the army came to a halt in Babylon. While preparing for his next campaign into Arabia, the king was struck by a sudden aggressive fever. Within days, he lost his ability to speak. His soldiers, sensing the end, were allowed to file past his deathbed one by one to say goodbye. In 13 years of campaigning, he had successfully coordinated armies across 3 continents, yet he left his empire without a designated heir or a plan for the transition of power. He had conquered everything in front of him, but failed to consider the mortality of the man leading the charge. When his commanders pressed him on who should inherit the throne, his instruction to leave it to the strongest effectively guaranteed a civil war. His senior generals immediately turned on one another, carving out individual kingdoms from the territories they had won together. In the struggle for control, Alexander's mother, his wife Roxana, and his only son were all assassinated by his former officers. For the next 40 years, the unified state he built was torn apart by relentless conflict between his successors. The empire as a political entity vanished, leaving only the spread of Greek culture and language across the regions he had conquered. Alexander possessed the tactical genius to win the world, but his own hubris left behind a void that could only be filled by the blood of his friends.